It's interesting. I wrote those words in 2019. And I think then, not that I was, as far from being the first person to make this point, that it is damaging to see anti-Semitism in any sense as an exceptional form of racism, or more so even as the kind of prototype for racism, which is the way in which I've argued for a long time now that anti-Semitism has been posed, but all other forms of racism have to be have to be discussed in relation to it. That the Holocaust was taken as the exemplar par excellence of what racist genocidalism could lead to. And that this, as many people have also noted, has led to a denial or an erasure of the histories of other genocides, which have formed a part of, racial regimes going back at least 500, if not years, if not longer. And when I made that point, I think the way perhaps in which I made it was seen as interesting, was slightly a different take. I also, was using this kind of dialectic of the good Jew versus the bad Jew. And all of these types of things, I think, have come into the light and been made absolutely, extremely obvious by Israel's genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza and also the West Bank and Lebanon over the last 18 months. And so we hear from many quarters this need to think about anti-Semitism relationally to other forms of racism, because it's so obvious that anti-Semitism has been wielded as a tool of power in order to deny the right of both Palestinian people, but also all those who are subjugated under racial fascism, their right to resist what that does to our lives, both from everything from repression, silencing, being fired from your job, to being detained, arrested, and deported, to being killed by the state. And we've seen the extent to which this isn't a new phenomenon, but the extent to which this has really been a feature of the post-Holocaust landscape for very good reason, because this is the way for the West to kind of exculpate itself from the crimes of the Nazi genocide, to distance the complicity of all Western states from those horrors, and to pose it as aberrant and outside of the realms of liberal democracy in order to be able to continue to perpetuate the structures of racial capitalism, which have only, continued to diminish the lives of so many people across the globe. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the things that I said back then are just very obvious today. And so I think in some ways we need to think further beyond, this question of what it means to place white Jews in relation to whiteness and white supremacy, and to think of the question of anti-Semitism relationally to other forms of racism. We need to think further for what that means, coming back to the dichotomy of the good Jew, bad Jew, to the extent that, in a sense, the bad Jew, in other words, the anti-Zionist Jew, because for Jewish people, Zionism is mandatory, has now been placed outside of the realm of whiteness, if we understand whiteness to be the meaning of power. So I guess that's a place to start, to think about where we go from here.